Hey everybody, it's Dan Harris. Thanks for checking out our video series. Today we're going to be talking about my top 5 player props for week 10 of the NFL season. Alright, let's start with A.J. Brown going under 75.5 receiving yards at minus 115. Brown is an absolute beast of a football player, so taking the under on any prop involving him is terrifying, but like all number 1 wide receivers, he's going to almost certainly draw shadow coverage from Marshawn Lattimore. That's just rarely good news. Lattimore has allowed just a 52.1% catch rate in his coverage, and he's taken several number 1 wideouts out of commission. In fact, those that have big statistical days, they usually come because of one big touchdown like Mike Evans or off an obvious pass interference play like DK Metcalf. Now, Brown does have one thing going for him here. Lattimore does not travel to the slot like ever. Just 24 snaps at slot corner all year, and although Brown primarily lines up on the perimeter, he travels to the slot more often than you'd think, about 33% of the time. So chances are he will see targets there and away from Lattimore, but this game has a total of just 44.5. Should be more of a defensive battle, so I don't expect Ryan Tannehill's pass attempts to be overwhelming. I have Brown projected for closer to 65 yards receiving in a tough matchup, so I'll take the under on 75.5. Next up, let's talk about Jared Goff going under 250.5 passing yards at minus 115. Goff has gone under this number in 5 of his 8 games, but in 3 of his last 4, and the only one he went over was the wonderful revenge game against the Rams. He is averaging 3.1 air yards per pass attempt. I mean, that's below checkdown kings like Ben Roethlisberger, Sam Darnold, and a guy who targets his running backs half the time, Mike White. The Lions lack any actual deep receiving threat, so it's really just DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson. And yeah, Justin Fields threw for 291 yards on Monday against the Steelers, and half the quarterbacks to have faced Pittsburgh have popped over this prop number, but it's going to be chilly in Pittsburgh on Sunday. There's a good chance of rain, and there's little chance of Goff having a big day here, or going over his passing yards prop. Next up, it's Mike Williams going over 60.5 receiving yards. Now, we have been fading Mike Williams now for a few weeks, going under on his props, and it has worked out for us. But now it's time to flip the switch and hit the over on 60.5. You know the negatives with Williams already, just 5 targets and 2 catches in each of his last 3 games, but he has drawn some pretty tough corners in shadow coverage of late, including Darius Slay in the most recent example. But that's not what he's going to get this weekend against the Vikings. Patrick Peterson is on IR, Bashaud Breeland is banged up, and Cam Dantzler has been very beatable the entire season. Also, the Vikings defense is exhausted. They're coming off an overtime game where they were on the field for nearly 100 plays. With an over-under of 53 points, you can expect points here, and Williams should be a factor. It's a perfect get-right spot for him, so take the over on his receiving yards prop. Next up, let's go under Patrick Mahomes' passing yards prop of 288.5 yards. Sometimes things just are the way they are, and right now, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' offense is struggling badly. 288.5 passing yards. Mahomes has topped this number once since week 2, one time. Whether he's banged up, whether there's suddenly a formula out there to keep this offense in check, Mahomes is not popping off for these huge days anymore. And now you've got a divisional matchup in Las Vegas where the crowd's going to be pumped against a team that has allowed just 2 quarterbacks to throw for more than 236 yards. Yeah, all right, they haven't faced the toughest competition, but we're in week 10. That is not fluky at this point. The Raiders are far more beatable on the ground, so you can expect the Chiefs to try to attack them that way a bit more. But either way, there's nothing about what we've seen with Mahomes of late that gives you any confidence he can approach 300 yards passing. Not a single sign. In a matchup that is not favorable for him, take the under on his passing yards prop. Finally, let's go over 40.5 receiving yards for Cordarrelle Patterson. Now, we took the over on a Patterson receiving yards prop once before and it did not hit, but this is a better spot. Without Calvin Ridley, Patterson's work as a receiver has become even more important. He ran 20 routes against the Saints and saw 6 targets, catching all of them, and you should see similar, if not better, numbers here against the Cowboys. The total in this game is 54.5, and you can certainly expect a bounce-back effort from the Dallas offense here. That's going to require points from the Falcons, fewer rush attempts, and more work for Patterson as a receiver. The Cowboys haven't given up a ton of receiving yards to running backs, but A, Patterson is not your typical running back anyway, and B, they haven't really faced many pass-catching backs. This is much more about Patterson seeing a 15.6% target share in a game where Matt Ryan is probably going to need to throw the ball close to 40 times. Patterson should get plenty of work as a receiver and hit this number. And that's going to do it for my top 5 player props for Week 10 of the NFL season. Don't forget to subscribe here at youtube.com/bettingpros so you don't miss all the great content we're going to continue to put out all year long.